Hi, I'm Barry McCockiner, and it's time to trigger every NFL Fanbase 2023 edition, beginning with the AFC. Baltimore Ravens. People always praise you for winning 2 rings with Flacco and Dilfer, and I know all of you Baltimore fans are just tickled pink by that. But it's actually a sign of how badly you've underachieved. We all know Lamar Jackson can't throw and is terrible in the playoffs, but what about before he arrived? Thanks largely to Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, Baltimore has had about 20 elite defenses in 27 years of existence. You guys should easily be sitting on 5 or 6 rings right now. And to be honest, you're just as big of underachievers as the Packers for only winning 2 rings in the last 30 years, but for the exact opposite reason. Your team's best player ever will always be the guy who took a plea deal so he wouldn't go to jail for being involved in a double murder. What happened to the white suit, Ray? Why was there blood in your limo, Ray? Why did you tell your homies to not talk about what happened, Ray? The fact that all of you in the Baltimore community have embraced this disingenuous pussy who hides behind religion and even built a statue of him outside your stadium to honor him is honestly disgusting. Buffalo Bills. I said in last year's roast of the Bills that Josh Allen was the Vegeta to Patrick Mahomes' Goku, but that was too nice. The gap between Goku and Vegeta is nowhere near as wide as the gap between Mahomes and Allen. If anything, Allen is Yamcha, Joe Burrow is Vegeta, and Mahomes is Goku. Yes, Allen beat the odds to become a good NFL quarterback despite being terrible in college, and guess what? Your team has dick to show for it. Literally, the Josh Allen era has produced more on-field dildo incidents than AFC Championship game appearances. Meanwhile, as Mahomes continues to climb up the GOAT ladder, what will Allen's legacy ultimately be? A talented also-ran whose best moment was in a playoff game that he lost? Better yet, what will the legacy of the Allen Bills be overall? Bitching and moaning so hard to change the overtime rules after 2021, even though the very next week, the Bengals got a defensive stop that you couldn't in overtime against the exact same team in the exact same venue to go to the Super Bowl? I am truly and honestly happy that Damar Hamlin is alive and well, and his story is unbelievable. But all of the great PR that he provides for your table-smashing alcoholic fan base doesn't change the fact that he's not a very good player, or the fact that you lost 4 straight Super Bowls and that O.J. Simpson is arguably the best player your team's ever had. Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow is the most overrated playoff performer in the NFL right now. While I admit it's incredible how he's helped turn the Bengals into a contender after they spent almost their entire history being a joke, he hasn't done anything to earn his clutch playoff reputation. The Joe Shiesty and Joe Burr personas he puts on when he's iced out and wearing shades and fur coats before games looks cool, I guess, and makes the ladies wet. But let's look at the facts, folks. Burrow has played in 7 playoff games. In those games, his defense has produced as many fourth-quarter touchdowns as he has on offense. 1. A.J. McCarron has more fourth-quarter touchdown passes in the playoffs for Cincinnati than Joe Burrow does. Am I the only guy who remembers Burrow producing 0 points on his last 5 drives in Super Bowl 56? Or how he had 2 fourth-quarter drives tied at 20 to win the AFC Championship game last year and produced 0 points once again? If Joe Burr was as clutch as his reputation, Cincy would be sitting on at least 1 and possibly 2 rings in the last 2 years. I don't want to hear the offensive line excuses either, alright? They always conveniently pop up from Cincinnati fans whenever Burrow doesn't come through in the clutch. The facts are, Burrow holds on to the ball too long. It's his biggest flaw. All I'm saying is, I'd like to see Burrow have 1 clutch playoff drive without a short field thanks to his defense producing a turnover before I anoint him as the next Tom Brady or better than Patrick Mahomes. Is that really too much to ask for? Skyline Chili is just glorified diarrhea. Cleveland Browns. A sexual predator is your starting quarterback and your fan base roots for him to win. That's it. Spare me the, I hate that we signed Watson, but I hope we still win routine. Hey dipshits, you won't win unless Watson plays well. Just admit that you care more about winning football games than women being assaulted. We all know it's true, just say it. Denver Broncos. God, I hate talking about the Broncos. They've somehow become more irrelevant than the Titans and Jaguars. In a way, being irrelevant is worse than being straight up bad, because nobody besides Denver fans will ever talk about the 2016 to 2022 seasons in any context ever again. To go from winning the Super Bowl to missing the playoffs 7 years in a row is objectively hilarious though. Russell Wilson is now Seneca Wallace with a Subway sponsorship, but don't worry Denver fans. I'm sure Sean Payton, who missed the playoffs 5 times with Drew Brees as his quarterback and has presided over some of the most famous playoff meltdowns ever, as well as that entire Bountygate thing, will lead you back to a title. His one dusty-ass Super Bowl trophy in 15 years as a head coach isn't exactly Vince Lombardi-esque. Broncos fans are the equivalent of an insecure woman in her 40s who laments the sexy new chick every guy is fawning over at work now, aka the Chiefs. Denver fans could rely on KC being their little brother punching bags for so long, but the tables have now completely turned, and quickly. By the time Mahomes is done, KC will have way more rings than Denver, and you Broncos fans can no longer hang your hats on John Elway being being the best quarterback the division has ever seen. And just to be honest, Mahomes is literally already light years better than Elway ever was at any point. It's not even close either. It's like comparing Usain Bolt to a Special Olympics sprinter. Houston Texans, the youngest franchise in the league. No offense to Wander Franco. It's going to be pretty impossible for me to top my Texans segment from last year's video, but the sentiment remains the same. Your team sucks. Your team has mostly always sucked, besides when you had a sexual predator as your quarterback, and your team will continue to suck for the foreseeable future. CJ Stroud is going to be a massive draft bust strictly because he went to Ohio State, and his face annoys me since he always looks like he's about to cry. The only thing I can say to Texans fans is, do you think that you're cool being contrarians? Why the hell would any person who wasn't born specifically in Houston, Texas, root for a Texas-based NFL team that's not the Cowboys? You're like the edgy chick in school growing up who wore a choker and had red, green, purple hair and didn't shave her armpits. Was that too specific? Maybe, maybe not. But it accurately describes Texans fans. You're all weirdos who will never get to experience success and you will die unfulfilled. And oh yeah, the Astros 2022 World Series title doesn't make their 2017 title any less fake. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are a less successful version of the Packers. Their franchises are both comprised mostly of Midwestern racists. Both have had a ton of great quarterbacks, and yet neither have won as many rings as you'd expect. Congrats on finally drafting a quarterback in the first round after spending the last 4 years on one-year rentals. Anthony Richardson should be fun to watch, even though his chances of turning out to be a great quarterback in the NFL after being mediocre in college are smaller than George Costanza's shrinkage. AR5, aka Big Tony, as I like to call him, should at least make Colts fans forget a little bit more about Andrew Luck quitting on them. As I said last year, Luck's retirement still lingers in the air over everything this franchise does like a wet fart in an elevator. Luck was a quitter, but I'm really going to trigger Colts fans now. Are you ready? Okay. Peyton Manning, while one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, was just as big of a playoff choker as his reputation. You can blame his defenses and kickers all you want, but the facts are Peyton did not come through enough in the clutch, and he never once had a dominant title run. Tom Brady would have won at least 3 or 4 rings on the Colts teams Peyton had because, as much as I hate to say it, Brady was actually clutch as hell. Peyton has also gotten a complete pass for shoving a trainer's face in his ass, quote-unquote, as a joke, when he was in college because, much like his brother Eli, he's got the entire whole goofy, harmless white dude shtick down cold, and morons eat that up. Morons, like Colts fans. Jacksonville Jaguars. Congrats, Jag-off fans, on winning an awful division and a playoff game against the, checks note, Chargers, who are famous for choking. You think you're hot shit now, huh? Trevor Lawrence has sucked for 75% of his career, and you all want to put him in the Hall of Fame right now, you sick bastards. As an Eagles fan, I will always have a soft spot for visor enthusiast / ice cream boss Doug Peterson, but doing a better coaching job than Urban Meyer isn't exactly the most difficult task. Now that your team has real expectations again for the first time since you choked away your random-ass conference championship game appearance in 2017, there is no doubt you will flop and miss the playoffs again. Travon Walker is quietly on his way to being one of the worst first overall picks ever. You guys could have taken Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, or Chris Olave, but instead you took a combine merchant. Also, one last thing, I will pronounce Jaguars any way I want. Your shitty franchise has done nothing to make me respect you or the quote-unquote proper pronunciation of your team's name. Jaguars, Jaguars, Jaguars. Kansas City Chiefs. We now turn to the team that has to pay off Carl Sheffers and the sod father to win Super Bowls. Mahomes is great. We all know this. Although, for all of his feats, his quest to becoming the greatest quarterback ever isn't as clear as many make it out to be. In 5 years as a starter, he has 2 MVPs, 2 rings, and 2 Super Bowl MVPs. That's legitimately great, until you realize he should already be sitting on at least 4 rings. Let's really take a deep dive on Mahomes, shall we? The quarterback he replaced, Alex Smith, had an amazing season in Andy Reid's system in 2017, while Mahomes sat on the bench as KC made the playoffs for the 4th time in the last 5 years without him. D Ford rightfully gets a lot of the blame for 2018, but don't forget Mahomes putting up 0 points in the first half of that AFC Championship game to lose to the guy he is chasing for the GOAT status. He got hurt in 2019, Matt Moore came in and put up great stats for a few games before Mahomes won his first ring and Super Bowl MVP, thanks to sexy Jimmy Garoppolo missing a wide-open Emmanuel Sanders to bail Mahomes out of a shaky performance. Then in 2020, he got hurt in the playoffs, Chad Henne came in and beat Cleveland, then Mahomes fell to 0-2 against the guy he's trying to supplant as the GOAT in Super Bowl 55 while putting up shit stats once again. In 2021, Mahomes choked away the conference championship at home in the second half to waste a golden opportunity to catch up to Brady in rings, and then last year he got hurt again in the playoffs and watched Chad Henne again come in and lead KC on a crucial touchdown drive versus Jacksonville. Then, of course, his defense bailed him out in the 4th quarter of the AFC Championship game with the game tied at 20 twice. Finally, Scheffers and the Sodfather worked their magic to make sure he got his second ring and Super Bowl MVP in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl 57. Shout out to Kadarius Toney for setting Mahomes up with a heroic 5-yard go-ahead touchdown drive as well. Mahomes is still 5 rings and 3 Super Bowl MVPs behind Brady, and I doubt he catches them in those categories. If he had been at his best in his 2 playoff matchups versus Brady, he'd only be 1 ring behind Brady right now instead of 5. If Mahomes gets hurt in the playoffs again and Blaine Gabbert leads KC to a ring, I know most of you quote-unquote Chiefs fans would be pissed because you're not really Chiefs fans, you're just Mahomes fans. And that's fine, but you have to own it, much like how Brady owns Mahomes in the playoffs. Las Vegas Raiders. Congrats, Raiders fans. You finally replaced career loser Derek Carr with the gorgeous specimen Jimmy G. That's the biggest win your team has had since 1983, when Ronald Reagan was still in his first term of peddling crack into poor neighborhoods. Despite your status as an iconic franchise, you've been completely irrelevant over the last 40 years besides the tuck rule game and getting your backs blown out in Super Bowl 37. Tom Brady owned all of you for the last 20 years as a player, and now he owns you in retirement. Literally. You got 3 rings from 76 to 83, but you should be sitting on 6 or 7 rings. We all love John Madden, but the fact is he was a terrible big game coach, going 2-6 all time in championship games. From 1967 to 1977, the Raiders made the AFC Championship game 9 times and had just 1 ring to show for it. It would have been 10 times too if not for the Immaculate Reception in 1972. Remember that? But that's the past. What about the future? Oh, you got Mahomes in your division. You're not winning shit for at least 15 more years, and you all know it. All you Raiders fans who wear jerseys to games and paint your face silver and black are pathetic losers. Grow up. Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are a loser franchise, and Chargers fans know it. Despite all of his hype, Justin Herbert couldn't make playoffs his first 2 seasons, and then when he finally got there last year, he immediately blew a 27-point lead. Yes, I said he blew a 27-point lead. He's always praised out the ass whenever he fires an amazing rocket downfield, but is never blamed for his bad to mediocre performances that litter his resume. Herbert has one of the greatest arms in NFL history, but did you know he didn't even average 10 yards per completion last year? I know, Joe Lombardi. But now Joe Lombardi is gone. There are no more excuses for Herbert to play like Teddy Bridgewater and Jacoby Brissett. Despite his freakish athleticism and measurables, he barely runs or scrambles for first downs or touchdowns. I know, he was hurt last year. Well, he was healthy enough to play, and if you're out there, there's no excuses. Let's see, what did I miss? Oh yeah, Nate Kading missing field goals in 2004 and 2009. Marlon McCree fumble in 2006. Phillip Rivers had great stats, but he was such a horrible clutch performer that he's not worthy of a Hall of Fame spot. The only place Chargers fans will ever see Justin Herbert hoist the Lombardi Trophy is on franchise mode in Madden. Miami Dolphins. Is Tua actually good now, or is he still just a fragile noodle arm quarterback who is propped up by having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at his disposal? It doesn't matter anyway, since Tua can't take a shit without getting a concussion and missing substantial time, thereby capping this team's potential greatly. It's a shame too, because for the first time since the early 2000s, Miami actually has a respectable roster. This once proud franchise hasn't won a playoff game in 23 years and has only made it to the playoffs 3 times in the last 21 years. As I said 1 year ago, the faces of this franchise will always be 2 men, Don Shula and Dan Marino. Shula won 2 rings, including the infamous undefeated 1972 season, but overall was just 2-4 in the Super Bowl. He coached both Johnny Unitas and Marino in their primes and won 0 rings with them. In fact, he coached Unitas for 7 years and won 0 playoff games with him as starting quarterback. He was the head coach version of a compiler. He even missed the playoffs 4 years in a row with prime Marino. But Marino isn't innocent though. He was godly from 1983 to 1987 and then alternated between merely very good to great the rest of his career, never again approaching his early peak form. Almost all of his 10 playoff losses were blowouts, and he led his team to just 15 points per game on average in them. His defense is normally stunk, and his run game was always non-existent, yes. But if he was truly as good as Dolph fans say he was, he should have won more than he did. I gotta say, building a statue for a guy who led your team to 0 rings, even if he was as cool as Marino was, is such a loser mentality to have. Especially when your team has 2 Super Bowl wins. 62-7, baby. 62-7. New England Patriots. You want to see a cool trick? I'm going to turn Tom Brady into Troy Aikman in 5 seconds. Are you ready? Tuck rule, Butler interception, Alfred interception turned Edelman catch, D Ford offside. Those 4 plays are the difference between Brady being the GOAT with 7 rings and Brady having 3 rings and countless cheating scandals with 0 GOAT case and a worse playoff passer rating than Blake Bortles, Tim Tebow, Mitch Trubisky, Baker Mayfield, and Mark Sanchez. That's how fickle legacies are. But I'll stop now before I go down my Brady hate wormhole. and trust me, I could do that for hours. The only reason to watch the Pats since Brady left has been to see how well Belichick would do without him, and after 3 years, the results have been average at best. Brady won the divorce, improving his all-time divorce record to 1-1. Belichick has still never won his division without Brady in 10 tries. That said, does Brady win 7 rings without Belichick? Fuck no. Belichick's defenses bailed Brady out countless times over the years, especially early on in their partnership. When Belichick either leaves or gets forced out by Robert Kraft, the Pats will officially become irrelevant for the first time since 2000. Most quote-unquote Patriots fans during the Brady era were just Brady fans. I don't know how many true Pats fans there actually are out there, and if there are any that aren't bandwagon fucks who harass people's families online, there's really nothing to say. We all know you will never experience another run like 2001 to 2019 ever again. Current iteration of the Pats is so boring and mundane, they're not even worth talking about. Mac Jones is average at best, and in a stunning twist of irony, after 2001 to 2019, the AFC, and AFC East specifically, are so loaded at quarterback right now that New England has absolutely zero shot at winning anything. Fuck Boston and Boston accents. New York Jets. The Jets have a loaded roster, specifically on defense. It's just a shame they're wasting it by paying a 40-year-old quarterback who hasn't made a Super Bowl in 12 seasons a ton of money to be their leader. Ironically, the last time the Jets made the playoffs was the only time Aaron Rodgers was lucky enough to get to a Super Bowl. If you know a Jets fan who hasn't had sex in a while, tell them not to worry, because come January, Rodgers will fuck them harder than they've ever been fucked before. Regular season Rodgers will wow you with his legendary arm talent and ridiculous touchdown-interception ratio while racking up wins, giving you false hope. This is what he does. But then, at some point during the playoffs, he will either disappear while the opponent turns the game into a blowout before padding his stats in garbage time to save face, or, as he has more recently, freeze up and start taking a bunch of sacks or miss open reads with a chance to take the lead late. He won't make the obvious back-breaking mistake like a Favre interception, but his low-key way of choking is just as bad in the big picture. It took me years to realize this, and many people, like you Jets fans right now, still haven't realized it since you're hyping Rodgers up to be like Tom Brady, Joe Montana, or even Patrick Mahomes, guys who are actually clutch in the playoffs. Given your history of quarterbacks, I can understand this, but maybe this next fact will finally wake you up to what I'm saying. Aaron Hernandez has played in a Super Bowl more recently than Aaron Rodgers. Long story short, when this season is over, you Jets fans will still be the same ugly-ass losers you've always been. Pittsburgh Steelers. Your fan base and community cheered on an alleged serial rapist for 18 seasons because he was good at throwing a football. You don't deserve to have 6 rings and iconic franchise status. 3 head coaches since 1969 is a legitimately cool stat. It's also a sign of complacency and unwillingness to change. I honestly don't know whether insulting Mike Tomlin makes Steeler fans upset or happy, which in and of itself is a sign that they aren't very smart. The guy's been there for 16 seasons, won a Super Bowl, made 2 Super Bowls, 3 AFC Championship games, and never had a losing season. But he also has a losing playoff record and just a 3-7 playoff record since 2011, so he's either the best bad head coach of all time or the worst good head coach of all time. I do know that racism absolutely plays a part in Steelers fans hating him though, because Bill Cowher was just as bad of a big game coach with as many rings and Super Bowl appearances as Tomlin, and he is beloved in the Steel City because of his grit and toughness, aka white. His awful 2-4 AFC Championship game record, with all 4 losses coming at home, should have kept him out of the Hall of Fame. Steelers fans supported Deshaun Roethlisberger for 18 years, yet absolutely have a cow anytime a black player celebrates a touchdown because they quote-unquote don't like showboating, wink wink. The Steelers are one of the few NFL franchises with more Super Bowl wins than attractive female fans. Kenny Pickett's absolute ceiling as a quarterback is being baby hands Alex Smith. Najee Harris is Trent Richardson 2.0 with better PR. George Pickens is the only exciting player on your roster, and for the upteenth straight season, you will be the most boring team in the NFL to watch. You're the Iowa Hawkeyes of the NFL, right down to the uniforms and racism. Oh, you expected all of these insults, huh? Well, I guarantee you didn't expect this next one I'm about to drop. Mario Lemieux was not a better player than Wayne Gretzky. Fuck all of you, but with consent, of course, something Big Ben doesn't know about. Tennessee Titans. Here's the Titans roster summarized. A superstar player at the least valuable position in the sport, a mediocre quarterback in his mid-30s, and 51 NPCs. Even when the Titans are good, they are irrelevant. Does anybody remember them making the AFC Championship game in 2019, or going 11-5 in 2020, or getting the fucking 1 seed in 2021? No, not any more or less than you do about them committing one of the biggest divisional title choke jobs ever to the Jaguars last year to miss the playoffs. After 10 games, Tennessee was 7-3 and Jacksonville was 3-7 for fuck's sake. If the Titans went 20-0 this season and won the Super Bowl in dominating fashion, it would be forgotten about within 2 minutes after the game. That's just how this team is. Under Mike Vrabel, they've never had any identity or year-to-year consistency outside of force-feeding Derrick Henry 30 times a game when he's healthy. Side note, Derrick Henry looks like a real-life version of Will Smith's character from A Shark Tale. They're never good offensively and defensively at the same time. In 5 years under Vrabel, they've had 2 top 10 defenses and 2 top 10 offenses, but never in the same season. Watching them play is like going to the DMV. It's a very strenuous endeavor. I do find it hilarious how they've actively tried to move on from Ryan Tannehill each of the last 2 seasons through the draft, but Malik Willis and Will Levis are both so dog shit, the team has had no choice but to go back for settling for Tannehill, who after 2 great regular seasons in 2019 and 2020 is back to being the meh quarterback he was in Miami. We all knew they would get destroyed in the 2019 AFC Championship game versus Kansas City, but choking away home playoff games each of the next 2 seasons afterwards has left this current core nothing more than an empty husk of a team. I mean shit, losing a home playoff game to Lamar Jackson and then losing the next year when your defense gives you 9 sacks is ridiculous. Also, Nashville, and really any southern state, are largely racist cesspools. If you enjoy country music, there's a 99% chance you have severe brain damage. Don't try that, and by that I mean listening to country music in a small town, or any town for good measure, please.